Hello, everybody. Hey, it's Jeff Widgren, your host of the Zoom Test Kitchen. Always glad to be here every Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern to talk about the new announcements of Zoom, the depths of Zoom, the tools that are outside of Zoom, in addition to help us with our events and productions and so forth. So we've got a lot of brain trust that shows up each Friday as their schedules allow, and certainly appreciate their knowledge. I am simply a moderator in this forum and community, but I do it professionally as well. But I don't claim to know it all. I don't think we all can. But so many things changing and growing every day and every week. And for instance, Zoom had a lot of announcements today. So not necessarily all packaged inside the Zoom client application that we're familiar with, but a lot of integration partners that are doing a lot of great things as well. So lots of things will continue to change and improve and make life just a bit simpler. So anyways, let's say hi to everybody. Wow, got my two co-hosts there, and they're both wearing shirts with logos. Oh my goodness, I just saw that. That's amazing. Oh, how cool, and thank you very much. So we got three across my top row of the gallery.
You should have heard the embroiderer say, "What do they cook there?" It was hard to explain to her what we do, what cooking we do.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, very good. Well, welcome, Ray. Say hi to Ray from Florida, and David from Florida, and Marty. Oh, I have to remember where Marty's out of. You have to remind me.
Maryland.
Very good.
Hey,
Good
Marty,
deal.
can you pump your volume up a few clicks? We can't hear you.
Yeah. So, well, very good. Anybody who was tuned in to office hours this morning got to hear Andy describe his said announcements. I've got these here. Let's see if I can just share them out.
I was overwhelmed by everything that he said. I just couldn't. It was 10 things. Here they are. And then it was amazing. Just unbelievable.
Right? Bang, bang, bang. He is, he's got it down. He's a true professional. That's for sure. So I copied and pasted his post on LinkedIn, and ZoomISO 2.1. They just released 2 with some fixes and enhancements, but 2.1 has been announced, not released, but announced, adding support for SRT, Zoom events, expanded audio workflows, and more. So, but that beta
Jeff,
will, yeah.
Could you explain what SRT is?
Yeah, so SRT is, I don't remember what it stands for without looking it up, but it's if I wanted to, or even if you wanted to, if you held, let's say, on your mobile phone, you picked it up right now and you downloaded it and installed, let's say, Larix Broadcaster, free app. It's a camera video app, and in the configuration, you can configure it to hit my public address, which I would make available to you, and also the SRT port and so forth. So you just give it a destination. Now I can set up in my world, it would be vMix. I can create an input, which is an SRT receiver, and all of a sudden your camera becomes one of my many inputs in vMix. And so it's a transport protocol.
So is that like NDI?
For video. Yeah, it's somewhat like NDI. NDI has added bridge and so forth to where, a couple of years ago, NDI, everybody, all anybody would say is, well, it's got to be on the same local network, right? Well, they've been adding to that ability to get outside your local network with bridge and so forth. But SRT is, I believe it's a TCP based transport, which ensures delivery and it ensures sequencing as well. So the packets are sequenced and so forth. And so what that does is that keeps it from keeps your video from having these gaps and lost frames and so forth, as I understand it. And with that, you've got some latency, because I mean, a TCP type protocol always carries that, because it gets sent and the sender waits for an acknowledgement back from the receiver for every single packet. And so it's an ensured delivery, where UDP is a throw it out there and just keep tossing. There's no acknowledgement that is required or expected. So it's very reliable, and the quality is high and so forth. So it's that ability to have remote contributors, if you will, with video and audio.
It seems like an interesting ad, given that I could grab remote contributors right now just using Zoom.
Yeah, on the inbound, yes. But if you had other locations or whatnot that you were the one, let's say, bringing them in from, let's say, ZoomISO or Zoom or whatever tools you're using, you'll be able to send out your isolated grabs and then outbound them via SRT to other remote locations around the world.
Gotcha.
And so it gives you that further ability.
Thank you.
You bet. So Zoom integration for BitFocus Companion says they'll be exiting beta. That's Companion, which means they'll be releasing it along with the rest of Companion version 3. This module gives you deep control of Zoom and so forth. I know at least David and I here can attest to that on 3.0 Companion, which I don't know how many, 2+ months probably, it would be my guess.
It's funny, every once in a while I'll export my Companion settings, and I have a folder for 2.4.1 and a folder for 3.0. I was exporting 3.0 today, and I realized I haven't even looked at 2.4.1 in months. And 3.0 is it's so stable. And the hardest part I'm finding of Companion is that I keep needing to make new graphics for my buttons, and it's exhausting. That's the hardest part.
Well, so you were certainly vital to me beginning to be willing to adopt Canva, and so I really try hard not to open Photoshop. I mean, I haven't created a Stream Deck button in Photoshop in quite a while now, and it's cool because you create. I design them at 144 pixels by 144 pixels, which is twice the size. So it's easy, and I still have to zoom into 500% on Canva, so it's a full screen, but it's just the right size to design it, and then I export it. And when you import it into Companion, it's fine. I mean, it's good with the ratio. It takes care. It doesn't matter if it's too big. And but as I've been working on this kind of consumer model, it's called right now ZTK, or Zoom Test Kitchen Meeting Monitor or Meeting Manager, plus the multi-page one that I've been working on as well. I hit Canva's limit of 300 pages in a single design.
For what? Just so you know, that limit used to be 100 pages.
Oh, wow.
And they lifted it from 100 to 300. So I would find myself having to duplicate projects, and then so that I would have enough pages.
Yeah. So I had to do, because I had multiple pages, right? So I had division points, in my project and work to where I could bust those out. So I duplicated them and then deleted everything except what belonged there. So it's pretty cool though. I do appreciate it. And yeah, I'd used Companion for quite a while and never did graphics, never even thought about it really. But once you start creating a few graphics, it's all over. That's all I
Why
can
don't you
say.
share a couple of screens, Jeff, of what you've done so that everybody can see? Because you've done an amazing job with your Stream Deck.
Wait a second. He's not the only one who gets to show off.
That's right. And it will be more than just me.
So wait, I'll show you. So this is the new thing that I've decided, and I think this is Jeff's fault, although I don't think you started it, is the idea of tagging, of grouping buttons with something at the top, right? Yeah. So for example, any of my buttons that have to do with pulling people up on stage, they have that little orange tag at the top there that says stage. Any of my buttons that are sort of navigation buttons, they've got the blue guy at the top. And then just today, I decided, well, if I'm going to do that, I really need to be consistent. So I did any buttons that have to do with breakout rooms. We'll get that tag at the top also. So nice. That's yeah.
Nice.
It's all your fault.
No. I mean that whole header. I was inspired by the header. I don't know how much meaning is behind his, but is it Robert Sabato? What's his first name? Brian. Can't remember, but it's Sabato. Anyways, he was showing off his builds, and I thought, I like the look. And then when you start using them, then here I'll show you. When you start using them, you've got the words in the headers are they're purposeful, in the sense of view, and on this page, if I go back to actions, all the green headed buttons are because of the new workflow in ZoomOSC, you can pre-select individuals. And so if I were to select folks in the meeting, those 4 selections, those 4 will be affected by any of the green headered buttons. So unmuting, muting, sending to the waiting room, it will affect, pushing that button will affect all 4 of those selected users. And then color coding on, mine's not perfect by any stretch. I have blue here that's spotlights and blue that's muting and unmute, so it certainly has some sorting out to do in time. I have let me spin this one up. This has been my project that I'll finally call done and market ready, if you will. The emulator didn't update.
Hey, while you're looking for that, I got a question. Is the ability to custom name and color these headers specific to ZoomOSC or ISO, or is it a Zoom function? Or
no, they're
companion function rather.
They are here, let me get my Mac screen up here. And let me kill the spotlight too. Oh, how do I want to pull this off? Let's do this. It's almost right. I don't think I have this. This is meant to be centered. There we go. All right. So if I This was a last minute addition. This is a standalone profile, but I added it to this current profile. So this is a profile that I'm actually going to put up, on a e-commerce site and make it available for download and purchase. And it starts with this first page, and it's really kind of that. I think the quickest way to understand my parameters of it is a consumer entry model, right? But that's, it's really not. It was really inspired with the point. I mean, it came from Andy even that said, hey, you should also consider building something that rids itself of the overwhelming presentation of the 16-page, professional solution that you've got that has breakout rooms and ISO management and, so many other features. Like, hey, if you just want to join a meeting and have a primary panel, we'll see what you can get, right? And so that's what I did here. And so the top 14 buttons are individuals. The default page is participant driven or order of arrival. And that is, it's non-moving in that sense. When like people show up, they show up, but it doesn't shift around, which I thought it was the only time I ever thought I'd really actually use participants versus gallery positions. And it's friendlier because it's fixed and it's not, monkeying with you on being able to, press a button and so forth. So the top 14, but you can page endlessly. You can page up to the 1,000 participant limit if you wish, with the next and previous paging. Then down below, and by the way, a big thanks to Robert Sababity, who has now joined the meeting. He slept while I worked, and I slept while he worked. That's how many hours we've been at it in the last 24 or so. But and he's done a lot of testing on this for me. He put together just a big old spreadsheet of what was tested, what he expected versus what he got, which was fantastic. Those two columns were great. And then ultimately any additional comments and suggestions. So thank you for that, Robert, for sure, because it really created a bit of a to-do list, which ended up making a lot of sense. So function, we went back and forth quite a bit on, if you go across the third row, there's the bronzy orange, there's green, there's bronzy orange, there's a couple more green, and we were battling over, Robert came back with feedback that I had already struggled with, and that was like visually, color grouping things together and so forth. And functionality, ended up winning in the sense that what are the most popular tasks a meeting manager is going to be executing? And that's on the bottom right corner, adding spotlights. The next one to it, removing those spotlights you just added. If you do nothing but select who you want to spotlight, if it's a multi-spotlight opportunity, you press the bottom right corner. If you press and hold the bottom right corner for half a second or more, so if you tap it, it'll spotlight all 4 people and only spotlight them. If you press and hold it for a half a second, it will spotlight them, unmute them, and lower their hand. So it's not undocumented from the user manual, but you can't fit all those directions on a button. And so it's just a matter of getting, used to the multifunctionality. And then the same thing on the remove spotlights. If you tap it, it'll remove the selections. It gives you an indication on the page of, how many there are selected. And if you tap it, it'll only unspotlight them. So it'll allow people to keep talking, but they'll be unspotlit. Or if you press and hold it for half a second, it will unspotlight them and put them back away, if you will, and mute them as well. So it's a multi-action deal there. And then clear spotlights is clear spotlights. It wipes all the spotlights away. Clear spotlights, by the way, is a very, very fast function. If you have 9 spotlights, it just goes whack, they're gone. When you do a multi-selected remove spotlights or multi-selected add spotlights, it's I call it a splat. It's a splat, 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 splat as it, builds them up on screen. The biggest challenge that Robert and I ran into was, like 6, 7, and 8 selected people and doing a spotlight, just spotlighting and just removing them, not a big deal. But the press and hold where it unmutes, lowers their hand, and spotlights is kind of puking all over itself in the sense we really had to work on what do we want to get done first, mute or the hand or spotlighting. And then the spotlighting with the multiples of like 6+ actually is a pretty significant task. And I do believe the delay that I settled on here is 3.5 seconds. So adding the spotlight is first, but unmuting will not start till 3.5 seconds after the spotlighting begins. And because if you start doing something during, you start losing, you might get 5 out of 6 or whatnot, and so you start losing some results. And so we had to find those kind of happy spots there. The grouping just above that is audio, right? Unmuting and muting, although I have that built into, for convenience sake, spotlighting and unspotlighting, but independently you can mute and unmute as well. Lowering selected hands or all the hands, sending somebody or more to a waiting room and back. When you send them to the waiting room, if it's not enabled, it will enable it. And if it is enabled, not a big deal. It just sends them there. And because there is no distinguishable difference. If they're in the waiting room, they're still going to show up on a button. You can't actually tell whether they're in the meeting or in the waiting room. But making the folks co-hosts, I didn't try this today. I should have. But I was scrambling a little bit. Sharing a screen. Let me, I wasn't set to jump over to this on my panel. I was ready for the big profile, not the little one, but let me dial this up to page 50. Okay, so now on my screen, I think, yep, that didn't work. So I'll share what I went through, what I'm going through right now. So I'm going to page 50. I have some things that aren't quite, I have missing variables. So if I go back to here and just share this with you, let's see if I can spotlight that. The main page, and it is my mind had never really had to think about is I'm going to be making this available to people. I don't know whether they're going to import it to page 1, 2, or 3 because there's 3 pages, or 50, 51, and 52, which is where I'm at just on a whim. I thought, well, I better put this on my deck so that if we want to talk about it or whatnot. And so I put on this is the title page, and this is the main participant-driven view, and then this is the gallery-driven view. And so I needed to know what page numbers those 3 pages are on their companion. I couldn't get by with just assuming page 1, 2, and 3, otherwise it was going to break. And it has, what I found out is when I import, I didn't want to do a full import. I wanted these 3 pages to get added to my, like 25 page profile already. And so I did that just by, importing buttons. But when you do an import into this, you can do a full import and you can choose buttons, triggers, custom variables, or surfaces. But under the full import tab, you can't just import custom variables and append them to what you've got. You have to do a reset and import on this tab. And so I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm adding this to a profile. So at that point, I had to go to the buttons page and choose, which pages I wanted to land where. And so I did that, but there was no way for me to just import. I can import just triggers, but there's no way for me to just import variables and have them appended to my existing library of internal custom variables. And so that's what's missing right now. That's why we're seeing these non-applicable pieces, because it's referring to, it's attempting to display an internal variable called int homepage. And so I could copy that and I can go to variables and I can go down there and manually create it. Whoops. It doesn't want the whole reference. Just wants the name. Okay, so that's that. So now I know I know that my home page is on page 50. And so I'm going to go ahead and give it its value also. And you can see that it fixed it right up. Actually, you're not seeing me put this in. I don't want to hide.
Yeah, you're kind of zoomed in, so we can't see
Yeah.
the page.
Yeah, let me see if I can get a wider view for you here. That's wider, all right. How about that one? And so this one is looking for this INT PID panel. And so I'll copy that to get this fixed. I'll go to the variables tab. I'll page down, which is where you can create new ones. I'll paste that in there and I'll add that. And I know that's on page 51. And then finally, the last one is the int gallery panel. And I'll add that variable. I know that's on 52. And so now when I change pages and so forth that I've got built into, some buttons, they change their destination that they're going to change to is based on those variables. And so now the variables have the right values. And so with that, let me go back here. What I can do, I don't want to bang on these buttons. It's like 50 out of 99. But if I tap on any of these 3 buttons, it ticks up. And it goes, if I tap the top one, it would be 50, 51, 52, 53. So they can tap till it gets to 99, and then it starts back over at 1, because that's the number of pages that a Stream Deck will support. So that's how this just the 3 points of configuration that I needed to provide the user, and go from there. So it looks like I didn't get my triggers either. Yeah, I should probably do an import on the triggers, because this clock actually has it's the date and the time that's running, but then every like 10 seconds it says press and hold to start, and goes back to the time, and press and hold to start, and so forth. So anyways, if you can't see this on screen, but if I just tap the clock button, my Stream Deck in front of me physically went down to 30% brightness, kind of for night operations, if you will. And if you tap that clock button again, it takes it back up to 100% for like day operations, so I like to try to think, just useful things that are not just toys and playground area, but something that, can actually be useful. But if I press and hold the clock, it got me there, didn't get me. Oh, it's not going to change the companion page, but so now I'm on this page on my physical Stream Deck. So it's a one deck approach. It is built only for the Stream Deck XL, the 32 button. I've maximized the real estate by removing the page up, page down, and page number indicator, those top 3 buttons here on the left side. And so I've been able to use them functionally. And I've also removed the title headers. And so I could have a full 72 by 72 graphic and space to put dynamic text in. So you can do that one of 2 ways. And I found this out when Robert installed the profile and he sent me a screenshot. All of his buttons had the top title, page 1.2 and 1.3 and 1.4 and so forth. And I first replied, hey, you need to go to settings and turn that off. And then I quickly realized I can't tell everybody who buys that, you know what I'm saying? Like, what if by chance they are, a companion user and they want those on? And so you can globally turn those off here on this third option under settings, but I'm going to go ahead and turn them on, go back to the buttons, and you can see they're not on. And because I had to change my approach, rather than try to command that somebody change a global setting because of my 3 pages, I had to, on every button, I had to choose that drop down. Whoops, there we go again. Here we go. I had to choose, select the button. This says top bar, and it says follow default by default, and that is whatever the settings, is set to. Or you can force it to show. So if settings says to turn it off, you can force it to show. If settings is turned on, I had to choose on all my buttons to explicitly hide those title bars button for button. So that was a little bit of a lesson learned for me as well. So I can, my solution can coexist with any of their other, worker designs and so forth. So with, I will say I am not a color scientist by any stretch of the imagination, but thank goodness for Canva. Canva's if you Google Canva color wheel, it is just a huge blessing to be able to tap into that. I can pick a primary color, but I have no idea how to identify complementary colors to that primary color. And so I would just copy and paste my primary color, put it in their color wheel, and and with that, it would give me several, 4 or 5 different scientifically described. I don't even know how to pronounce a couple of them, but there's just different approaches to complementary color, monochrome, and 2 or 3 others. But it just gives you a palette to choose from that is going to look good together. And so this blue was my primary, and so the green selection was a very late addition, by the way. Purple is there for a live mic. That all is under feedback, and so actually it's active speaker. So if they have a live mic, it's blue. If they are the active speaker, it's purple. So if it was blue, but then I became the active speaker, my blue is going to change to purple, period. You can't have like multiple representations on one button. If the hand is raised, it can keep the background color, but put a transparent PNG on top of it, so you can still see the color come through the transparent portion of it, and like Ray's hand, thank you, Ray, and so, but that hand actually is a full duplicate of the button graphic. It can't take the button graphic, which is the header, and then the whole bottom is transparent, and it can't overlay a PNG on top of the original graphic. You have to duplicate the graphic and add a hand to it. So I'll even show you in Canva. I'm feeling a little bit like David right now opening Canva.
How many hours have you got into this, Jeff?
I don't know. It's a commitment. It's
amazing.
been a commitment, in the sense of I'm doing this. I mean, it has a lot of purpose behind it because I'm, building an e-commerce site. I got the pro model that I'm pretty close to being done as well. And I'm putting together training, and so forth that will be available. So, but when you get into, let me find the right collection.
And the training can be in multiple languages from a source you work very closely with.
I know, right? He could take care of that. I can train worldwide in their native languages. So you can see that my primary, you can't see because this is the cropped version. Did that? No, that didn't help. Full screen. There we go. So you can see that I have 2 sets of identical buttons, one through 14 twice, but one has hands on it and one does not. And so when a hand is raised, feedback will change when a hand is raised, I have a choice of things to do. This is feedback that's provided from ZoomOSC's module and supported by Companion, actually. So the feedback options are per button is we can do something based on the person being selected or having a live mic or having their hand raised, having their camera off, or being the active speaker. So we can act on any of those events, if you will. What we can do when that event shows up is we can change the text. We can adjust the font size, which is limited, but there's some choices. We can change the text alignment. We can change this color description is super helpful. That's the color of the text. And then the background is the background color. What I've chosen to use, they're not on the list because they're up here being used, is when their hand is raised, I want to tell it what PNG to use and control its alignment as well. And so when a hand is raised there. Up above, I'm just changing the background color and the color of the text itself. So if I were to take out color, you can see all I can do is change the background. If I drop this down and say text, not text, color, then I can set that back to white where I had it. Down here for the camera off. And so things that you can, so I have like 5 feedback events I can respond to, but there aren't 5 different ways to represent those things because one trumps the other. So as it goes down the list, the last one on the list is the one that wins. If it's a full page graphic, it's just going to replace everything else. But so if the camera's off, I change the text. And so I take the name of the participant. You can see this, even the very first button is my ZoomISO machine. The camera is off. I'll turn it on. That wasn't a great idea, was it? Can't even see. Oh, here we go. But you can't see it. But I'll turn it back on, and then I'll get back out of here. Maybe here we go. Back to Chrome, and you can see now that it's back to its original name, participant name of ZoomISO. But when the camera is off, it will add the cam off plus the participant name. And so it just concatenates a prefix or it takes that away, one or the other. And And so with that, it you can change text without affecting anything on the background. You can change the background color without affecting text. You can replace the background PNG graphic with another one, which is my opportunity for the hand raised. But those are the only three, separate ways to do it. My ideal would be, I'd love to be able to, let me get zoomed in here a little bit. I'd love to be able to take along the bottom, I'd love to be able to have a red and a green microphone and a red and a green camera, and, to indicate, and then ultimately the hand. So like 3 icons across the bottom that maybe are just, a light gray, like not doing anything. When you get to the person, you go, hey, they've got a live mic. It's a small green mic. It's a small green camera, and their hand is raised, or any of those combinations. That's not achievable right now, as far as I know. I mean, I've tried to get as creative as I could, and without writing, like a trigger for every button, and then every combination, you'd have to have a green mic or a red mic, or a green mic with a green camera, a green mic with a red, it'd just be nonsense. And so my hope and wish and submitted ticket to the developers is that those individual states can be identified, like both sides of those states. And there's a few things that work incredible. Companion 3.0 is way, way, way more powerful than before, but triggers, I think they need more as far as conditional. I go, hey, if you meet this condition, do this. Yeah, but what if you don't meet that condition? I want you to do that, and it won't do that. And if I'm just to be able to dynamically, like even in a trigger, change the PNG, you can't change the trigger, or you can't change the PNG from a trigger, but you can change the text and the color on a button. Well, why the heck can't you change the graphic then? So there's little things like that. Like I can't even think deep enough to go, now, why not? I mean, when I'm changing it, when I can change the other 3 or 4 elements of a button, why can't I change the PNG? It's only available on the feedback piece of the program itself. So anyways, little by little by little, it'll improve, or I'll understand and I'll stop complaining about it. All right. Any question about this? I'm gonna change pages here real quick.
Yeah.
So
How is it that you're renaming the header bars?
yeah, so the name that automatically shows up comes from this variable. It's an internal variable that ZoomOSC makes available. And so if you reference this variable, not the first 4 characters there, those are line breaks, but this highlighted piece, if you put that in a field, it will spit out the person's name who is participant number 2. And so that's very dynamic. So when I'm going to highlight Ray is this participant 4. So on the feedback part of Ray's button, when his hand is raised, well, actually it's when the camera is off. Here's the original participant 4, you reference that's what that's going to output. I insert that variable, but then I prefix it with what I want in front of it, which is 2 line breaks, the words cam off, 2 more line breaks, and then his name as it was originally. And so if you would, Ray, bounce your camera off real quickly. There we go. Well, not quite that quick. There we go. So it took that same, variable output, prefixed it with cam off and the, little arrows. Now when he turns his camera back on, that event is no longer, or that feedback is no longer true. Therefore, it just goes back to the original
Right.
variable only that's in the title.
What about the top bar, which defaults to the button position in computing?
That is burned into the graphic. That's not a changeable number. That is just, I knew what these buttons were going to represent is position 1 through 14, and it became part of the graphic itself. There's nothing that dynamically returns a 04 or a number 4 or whatnot. So I burned them into the graphic. The only part of these buttons that are actually a graphic, although it's 72 by 72 pixels high and wide, it's only the red bar with a number in it that's actually the graphic. The entire bottom portion is transparent, and it's a PNG file, and therefore it lets me. I didn't do it in this project, but I had a project where I had a header, and I might have done it actually on my other build that's on the Stream Deck, but it was much like this microphone down here. No, the green one's a better example. The green would change to red or green dynamically based on the button's background color. So what shows here as being green is actually the transparent portion of the graphic, where the black and the green header selected is solid pixels. And so the see-through part was just outside the white part of the microphone and all inside of the black circle. And so you can change the background of the button. So that, I didn't implement it here, but you don't really need a line through a microphone to consider it muted. If that green microphone turned red, visually we all get that would be, a muted microphone. So that would be a button saver, right? Like, as far as status, you wouldn't have to, have one or the other and so forth. So anyways, just different thoughts and approaches, creatively. All right.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
Is there because I can't find it, is there a ZoomOSC ISO action to enable original sound?
Yes. Yeah. But keep in mind, the only, unless you have like remote capability between, you have OSC, I have OSC, you've granted me remote access and so forth. Unless you have that implemented with, both people having, licensed copies and so forth, the only original sound machine that it's going to switch on and off is the OSC machine. And
you can't select a user and then gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, you can, but that user, that relationship of remote control has to have been established with license and configuration, and then you could pull that off. I haven't checked lately, but original sound on and off, if you ever want to do this yourself on your own OSC machine, last I checked, but it's been at least 2 weeks, it doesn't change the label dynamically on screen, but it is in fact changing the functionality of original sound on and off. And so if you pushed your button and for original sound on and it still says off, what did I do to do this? All you have to do is create a screen refresh. You just go from speaker mode to gallery mode or anything that causes the screen to have to adjust, it will update the label to the real status. But the sheer event of turning it on and off is not refreshing the screen. So I had to get a little bit creative. I got creative with this one too. when on this clock button on the title page. So assuming this is where they start, right? On this button, if I bring up, what does it do? When you're ready to go to the main page and start, managing a show, you, pretty sure I've got it here. Yeah. So it sets the gallery view on the ISO machine, because that's, if you're going to have a gallery page, it's pretty important that it's on the gallery page so that it can keep its buttons up to date. It changes to the participant panel. I do it to both my emulators so that I can show you guys on screen what is happening, and also my Stream Deck. So the current Surface, the emulator, when I make this shippable, I'll kill the emulator entries, and because they're not necessary for a user. But then I do a pen on the ISO machine and an unpen. Why would you do that? And every time, here's why. I don't commonly host meetings on my ZoomOSC or ISO client. I do that on my vanilla client on my PC. And then next to me on my M1 Mac is ZoomISO, and then it joins the meeting. I don't have any luck joining a meeting lately and having the gallery page get populated automatically and keep up with everything. You have to kind of kick it into gear. And that's exactly what that penning and unpenning is doing. So when I had to think, well, how can I cause them to push a button and do something they really don't even recognize? But what it's doing for itself is kicking that data stream into gear for the gallery page, and that's why that's there. And it took a little testing, because you can see that on the unpen, I had to wait like 250 milliseconds to let it do its penning and then do an unpen and so forth. Otherwise, it just stays penned, because you try to unpen it so quickly, it was never finished penning and it doesn't happen. So you have to figure out those timings sometimes. And notice the key word, me. And so that's just that is me, myself, my camera on the OSC or ISO machine. That's that reference. And so and the reason I went with pen, I originally actually went with a raise hand and lower, but everybody sees that, right? Even if it's really momentary, everybody sees it. A pen is just on my machine. No one else sees that happen. So I tried to get something until this issue is fixed. I had to come up with a little something to make it work. So, all right. What else have I got? Oh, so let's see if I can bring up the emulator, see if I can size this up for you to see it. That's really big. That's just too big. I'm not even going to be able to get that to fit. Let me go to the Zoom right. I need to that'll help. That'll help. Get some of this stuff out of the way. Now I think I can get it here. There. That'll work. So this is actually a functional representation. I can use my mouse as if it were my finger on my Stream Deck. So, to be able to select and unselect, one of the it's the hardest thing in the world to really nail down exactly what the 32 buttons are going to be. It has gone round and round and round and round. And one of the very last buttons we added just yesterday or this morning when I woke up, right, Robert? You had he left me a voice message on WhatsApp and said, I finally know what I'd like to see in that last button. And it was, we removed the unpin button. And so the pin local button, pin local is a quick touch, hold, press and hold is an unpin. And so I just put both functions into one button there, and we added this clear all. And so it's a quick way to just deselect who you had selected and get, exactly who you want correctly. And it works quite well. Cloud recording is actually pretty sensitive, right? And so there's nothing it will do if you quick press that button. You have to hold it down for at least a half a second before it'll start the cloud record. And same thing on stopping the cloud record as well. So there's that. Now, what you haven't seen yet is I don't think we have enough here to page. Well, we do have some movement. Okay, yeah, we have enough. How many do we have in here? It says there's 13 people. So it went previous, and then it starts circulating through them all. So anyways, it's kind of cool that, you can page through and so forth, and it rotates. You can see there's 2 Jeffs here, I guess. That's kind of odd, but needless to say, the next page is the next page on a quick press, but if you hold this down, it'll actually go into a gallery view representation. And I didn't do this till pretty late in the game because my original parameters is I want a 1-panel approach, But the more I thought about it, I said, I'm only showing 14 people at a time. And yes, you can page through them. But if somebody, has 200, 300, 400 people in their meeting, that's a pain in the butt, especially if there's raised hands, and how easy it is to get a view of raised hands when you display the gallery page, right? Because Zoom moves them to the top left. And so if somebody wants to, John, if you want to raise your digital hand, and because you're down there on button number 9, you're going to move up to button number 1. And so we'll watch that. I can tell right now my ISO client is not in gallery view. It's exactly what happens. You expect it, and you're going, why didn't it do it? I know now. I don't. It's no mystery to me. So I'll bring this up. Yeah, there we go. Well, looks like we have more than just a gallery view thing, because that should have bounced John over there to button number 1. I'll have to check that out and see. So I'm gonna try to troubleshoot this in front of everybody so that you can see what I go through. I'm gonna do you can kind of see what I'm doing. I'm just gonna move a video from one spot to another. That causes like a screen refresh. That causes Zoom to kind of report out, the new position of everything. Somebody else raised your hand now. I don't know if it fixed it because there's no raised hands. Yeah, that's not happening either. So anyways, I'm not going to wait too long on it, but this definitely isn't refreshing the way it needs to, because naturally the first one should be in the top left, and then the next and next and next. But I will, if it's anything super mysterious, I'll report accordingly. So now, because the gallery page or buttons are very dynamic, and hands raise when mics go on and off, when video goes on and off, there's potentially a lot of shifting around of people's names in positions. I do not have the press and hold functionality on each of these buttons to spotlight. So if I go back, if I press and hold to go back to the participant side, and let's find Ray, if I click and hold, that just instantly spotlights and unmutes Ray. If I just press and hold again, it just pulls them back out. So it's a really, really, I think it's the fastest way for individual spotlights, or even two. Who else on camera? So David and Ray, I'll go Ray. Here's David, and it's pretty speedy, even with just 2 press and holds at that, and so it. But these are fixed buttons on the participant representation, where the gallery just has too much. I tried, and it was driving me crazy. So I just didn't have a way to really make it useful. So there is no press and hold magic on the gallery page, although you can obviously, select those 3 raised hands, if you will, click on add spotlights, and it'll spotlight accordingly. There's one without a camera, so it won't spotlight. But when you're done, just remove them. So if you quick press on add spotlights, it spotlights but does not affect your microphones. If you and same thing on the remove, it just throws you back visually out of the spotlight. But if you press and hold, it will unmute you and spotlight you. And if your hand was raised, it will lower your hand as well.
You've muted yourself, Jeff.
I unmuted you.
I am actually. Now I am. Yeah. So out of everything that's here, functionally, I don't think that there's anything except muting, mute all, and mute selected. And it's not on this layout, but there's also another function that you can call called mute all except. And so if you had a special group of people, because you can manage group membership as well, you could pre-select that group and then execute mute all except, and it will mute everybody except those people that were in that group, or those people that you have selected on the Stream Deck, whatever the case may be. But it's not working properly, and so that's a known bug, known issue. Mute all works fine. Mute selected
there is a
works okay as well.
There is a mute all except hosts. Is that working correctly?
No.
Really?
There's a mute all except hosts separate?
Yes. Yeah. So this is, you've got mute all except hosts. So if a couple non-hosts turn on their mics.
So let me.
If a couple of non co-hosts or hosts unmute themselves, please. I can check that one. All right. So Robert is unmuted. So I'm going to now press the button and see. And nothing happened. Yeah. So that's not working either.
Yeah. Yeah. So that one's like not executing. The mute all, it's, as I understand it, the mute all is not supposed to mute host or co-host, but it does. With the only microphone it will not mute is the OSC or itself, basically. It's the only one that it won't mute on mute all. So there's some work that needs to be done on the muting accuracy for sure. But outside of that, and that's not to end on a bad note. This has come a huge long ways. From Companion 3.0 being developed over the last, long time. I haven't been involved in the entire process, but I've been involved the last few months, not developing it, but, banging my head against issues here and there, but submitting tickets and, helping with the feedback side. But then the same thing with the ZoomOSC module as well, is provide, got quite a few tickets put in there, and quite a few have been resolved, and it's become a, more stable, reliable, dependable library for sure, in a very, very big way. So to land on just, mute, pretty doggone good place to be, with the exception of, if I sell this right now, I'm screwed, because I'm going to have, customers that are expecting one thing and getting another. And
what's the timeline on when they think they're going to release this for out of beta?
3.0, Companion 3.0. Well,
Yeah.
Companion 3.0, I thought I heard Andy say today in a couple of days. So I know it's going to be April, but it sounds like one day next week they'll release 3.0. So the platform itself will, be at a release point, and then all new development will, unless all new development will be in the experimental category. If you want to continue to live there, that's fine. If not, the stable version will kind of stay stuck for a while. Trying to see. Oh, I mean, share screening. This share screen is technically, it's a share primary screen, and so as long as you know what your primary screen is, and if you can live by the rules of anything you want to share, make sure it's on that screen. I mean, there's nothing simpler than a one button press of sharing and one button press to get rid of it. I mean, that's there's so many things with this that totally support. Like my favorite, most popular way to describe what Stream Deck and Companion and so forth do for you is they get rid of clunky Zoom management, period. And the key word being clunky, because it's that mouse. It's this mouse, okay device, but it's a pretty small pointer trying to find pretty small targets, and I mean, check this out. If let me bring me back. Well, let's stay on let me go to a share. If I had 4 people that needed to be spotlit, go to the gallery view, your gallery view, and just pick one of those videos, assuming, the top left here. I'll give you I'll give you my order. So David is in the top left, right? And so let's point at David and count the clicks. So we need to spotlight him, we need to unmute him, and we need to lower his assumed at this point raised hand. Okay, so I've got I mouse over him, and if I would unmute first because the button's there and it's not going to change anything on my screen. And so I would go unmute. There's one. I would click on the 3 dots, which is the tiniest target in the world. But I would then on the drop down, your hand's not raised, but the lower hand would be an option in the menu at that point. So yeah, so I click on the menu. I click on the menu to show the menu. That's click 2. Then I click on lower hand. That's click 3. Then I have to click again on the menu. That's 4, to then finally click on spotlight. So that's 5 clicks per person. So 5 times a 4 up is like 20 clicks of a mouse. And people wonder why Zoom meetings are so clunky, as far as being managed and switched, right? And so you compare that to, I select those 4 people on my Stream Deck and I just say add spotlights, right? And that just makes it happen, right? And it's just a total game changer.
Jeff, we've lost your audio again.
Sorry. It takes time for them, one, to get introduced to it. But the challenge, quite honestly, is get back to me here, is when I've built this panel, for instance, and so somebody said, I love it, and the video I'm making to, share with people that it's out there and available, is not going to say a word about Companion or ZoomOSC. It's going to get them in love with the method, right? Just panel these buttons and the results on Zoom, period. Get them in love with that. And then, then there's a couple of steps you have to take. One has to be, one in almost all cases will have to be a subscription to ZoomOSC Pro, and so that you can multi-spotlight and so forth. But the other is to download and install what's called Companion, right? And so those are supporting tools. It's if commonly when we purchase something that we really want, there's some additional efforts or purchases to help support it. And but that's what comes with the territory on this. But at the same time, you're purchasing something that, one, will get you started tomorrow on your next meeting. Two, if you wish to be that person to put a little time and knowledge into Companion, you can extend it. You can build it. One of the first things Robert did was sent me back a screenshot of all the new positions of buttons the way he liked them. I mean, you can alter it, right? And so it gives you that flexibility if you want as well. There's Jason says in the chat, assuming you're on a Windows machine, what happens if you right click on Paskin's image in the gallery? Is it less number? I am on a Windows machine, and so if I were to, I'll share the screen so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. So his point is, you have this pop-up mute and unmute button, which is kind of out there and pretty easy to see and get to. But then you have the smaller button, which is, I call it their famous pop-up of choices, that for every time you click on one, the menu disappears. Like the security badge. I need to change 4 things, and every time I change them, I have to go back. You know what I'm saying? It's like, have you heard of the concept of checkboxes? So that I can pop it up once and check, uncheck, and be done. But needless to say, that's my thoughts on that. So Jason's point is, rather than clicking on, so I think the biggest benefit to Jason's point is target size. So the target size of this, ellipses button is pretty doggone small. There's not a whole lot of things that are smaller than this actually in the Zoom management piece. So, but you can right click on any video and get that pop up as well. So that certainly makes it easier with less aim, if you will. And the only thing that changes that to a degree is the more people you have in the meeting. If your gallery is hosting 49 people, you'll have a little smaller video than what we've got here is 12 right now, and some computers are limited to 25 based on their capabilities. But that it's a fair point. But the number of clicks, I don't know if it changes the number of clicks. So I went 1 for unmute, 2 for a right click, 3 for spotlight, and it would be 4. So it's more. Let's 1 for the unmute, 2 for the right click, 3 for the lower hand, then 4 because the menu will disappear after I click on lower hand. I have to do 4 to get the menu back up. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4 to get the menu back up, 5 to then click on spotlight for everyone. So it's equal.
Plus, you have the hidden notice that I get when you click that I'm about to go live and make sure and that my microphone is on. So that's a hidden thing you don't get from the Zoom operation.
Yeah. You want them to be ready. I mean, Robert and I talked about this in our messaging. So your point is, I built a trigger that fires when a raised hand is in the first gallery position, which is, like in baseball, you're on deck, right? You're next. So when you end up on deck, this trigger automatically sends you a direct message that says, hey, you're up next. Please be ready to unmute or respond to the unmute request. And, then the thought is, well, why can't a host just unmute? Well, they can if you schedule the meeting with the check mark to ask the people logging in to, will they allow the host to unmute them? And if they answer yes, then you can unmute painlessly. They don't have to manage their microphone at all. So my press and hold would unmute them, spotlight them, lower their hand 100% of the time. But if they answered no to that question, so if I forgot to set it up in the meeting invite, or I did set it up and they answered no to that question, then my unmute call will turn into a prompt on their screen that says the host would like you to unmute or something like that. And then it just throws in a process. So I manage a meeting under somebody else's account that has 800-900 people in it. And so I never allow participants to unmute, period. That option under the security shield never gets changed. And so they're never allowed to. So when they raise their hand to speak with this author, we call on them. And when I press spotlight or on stage on that build, excuse me, the on stage first attempts to unmute them. And I know it won't, because this client won't enable that question for people to respond to. And so I know that nobody can be unmuted by me. And so they're all going to get prompted. So I press that, and so it instantly sends them up a little pop-up. Then I put in that my next action is spotlight, but it has a 2-second delay before it spotlights. And so that gives, them time to respond on screen to the unmute request. And then it spotlights. And I mean, it's not going to wait for them to respond. It just waits 2 seconds. And it just works out that time is pretty right most of the time. And so it's just kind of figuring things out that way, right? You can make it. But the hey, I know how to set up a meeting to prompt the users while they're logging in with that question, but it also takes a little coaching to your panelists, right? That says, hey, when you log into this meeting tomorrow morning before, we go live, you're going to be asked, and please respond yes, because then we can very easily manage your microphones, and we'll keep you muted when you're not speaking, and we'll unmute you when you need to speak, and you won't even have to worry about it. And it just adds a little more smoothness and polish to the meeting, right? That all too commonly, how many times do we hear, you're muted? You're double muted. I mean, it's just like, it's endless. And so it's just a matter of, what can we do to smooth it out, right? And there's a lot of things that can be done. Mr. David.
I don't know if I brought this up last time. I think I might have. But one of the things that I find incredibly tedious is trying to replicate buttons that have multiple actions. Like, for example, the long press, right? Mm-hmm. So this is on this button here, I've got a short release action, and then I've got all these actions for the held for 500 milliseconds, right? You've got, just like you do, you pre-select, you single spotlight, clear selection, set gallery view, and then set current step. What's so tedious is that you can't, what I want to be able to do is copy this, paste it here, and say, no, this is now for gallery position 2. But you can't do that.
Yeah, no. You have to convince yourself that the work involved in renaming all those position numbers, and when they're referenced in your feedback and all that, anywhere they're referenced, it's still easier than trying to add all those actions accurately to every single button, you know?
Right.
And yeah, no, I'm totally with you. I do wish, but that, you know, I mean, Stream Deck knows, or Companion knows, you know, what button number it is, but Companion will never know how a vendor is going to end up using it, right? The vendor for the module that gets developed. It just so happens that, you know, ZoomOSC uses numbering systems for like order of arrival and gallery position, but there's still no guarantee that you're going to put gallery position 1 on the top left button, which is actually number 1 on a Stream Deck. You know, that's actually their up arrow by default. And so I don't know that that can ever really merge, you know, if there was, you know,
Maybe
if
it's
there
just
was-
like a find and replace function. you
Yeah,
know, like in,
yeah,
like in a
oh,
Word doc. You know,
totally.
search this entire button, and everywhere you see the number 2, change it to 3 or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, but your initial copy and paste, everything's a 1 on the 32 buttons until, and so even that approach, yeah, I don't know. It is, you know, sometimes I feel very accomplished on some projects, you know, especially triggers, and some trigger stuff drives me out of my mind, but because I don't think some of it works right. But needless to say, some of it, I just feel like this is absolute tedium, you know, because you're doing it for button after button after button, and you're just making it unique by a number, you know, but that number's represented or referenced, you know, multiple times on a multi-action button too. So yeah, it gets a little old. But here's the deal. I think here's the big benefit is I know a lot of people who build their companion profile for every show. And it's like, wow, this stuff, like I I could never put it up, you know, for consumption, if you will, if it wasn't reusable, right? And so, you know, because it's Zoom OSC and it's Zoom meetings, you know, what I've built, what you've built, and others have built, we can plug it in, and you know, I mean, I can plug it into a, you know, different computer if I have the profile with me, but you know, it just, all I do is join the next meeting, and it works in that meeting just like it did in the last one, you know. And so it is pretty impressive there, because your efforts actually have stickiness, you know. And so it's quite cool that way. All right, what else?
Did you want to jump into the graphics, the SPX graphics?
Oh, thanks for the reminder. Yeah, let me. So yeah, one of the announcements was the SPX graphics, and Tuomo. I know Tuomo because I happened to be at the rocket launch, you know, over a year ago now, right? But anyways, Tuomo came, you know, flying in from overseas, and he's just an awesome individual. But he owns SPX and develops, you know, that solution and so forth. And his designs, I think, are just fascinating, but just fascinatingly good. You know, they're just so professional looking. But if I go to apps,
By the way, I was trying to, it worked for me before, and I was trying to get the app charged up in this meeting, but I wasn't able to, and I was wondering if there might be a setting. I added it to the bug report. I was wondering if maybe there was a setting on the host
it was
end.
wild. So I was I was a in my car watcher this morning to office hours, and while Andy was, you know, making his announcements and so forth, and I probably got back to the house, you know, at about 45 past the hour, and when I got to my computer, this little pop-up was there in my Zoom about SPX graphics. Like, what? That was like well planned, to the office hours timing. It was impeccable, actually. I think Andy must have helped with that coordination, but it was pretty impressive. So, anyways, so I responded to it. One, I know Tuomo and appreciate his work, and wanted to check it out. And so let me see if I can get it to launch. It's actually spinning. Oh, here it comes. Okay. Here, let me share this main screen.
So it's not just me, because mine was also.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
I actually clicked on the upgrade button. Well,
that's broken also, right?
Yeah, and that's broken too. You can't even buy it right now.
But it's set right. It at least says that on their
It
website.
does.
It says, yeah. So I said,
well, if you only look at the sold out, you're
Right.
done. You have to read the small print on
oh
the
wait,
bottom
I just
left.
got in. It just,
did you?
I just got in. Yeah. So here's
Into the app. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, mine too. The second try, it works. So you're showing the result. I'll
Although you can see there's an error in here, right? So if I toggle this
Yeah.
off and then back on,
Oh,
that
mine
green
didn't.
line will go to the right
I
place.
see. I got you. So yeah, the config. Who's sharing right now? You or me?
I'm not sharing. You're still sharing.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
But
So
I'm
you
just- I
see my
spotlight-
you see my
spotlight
toolbar,
myself.
but you in the middle. That's fine. So yeah, the config here is, and so you just click on the app button, right, and open up the apps. And if you have to search for SPX graphics, do a search for that. But when you do that, you'll be here. And this is the recently opened, or these are my apps. I don't use much, but if you want to add apps, that's where you click on the add apps and you do a search, and you can go find it as well. But if you've got it, or once you've got it, then this is the configuration screen, and it's in beta right now. It's an early announcement, early release, and it's not completely functional, but I've put in my name and my title and the Zoom Test Kitchen, and I can save that and play, or I can just save it and uncheck the and play, and then pick the location of a logo and clock, and you can choose whether you want just the logo or just the clock. And I'll do both for now so you can see it. The logo file, I'm not on a pro version. I'm assuming that's why I can't choose a logo file yet. And then some headlines. This is a text file. Yeah, I actually copied the original text that was there and put it in a text editor, and then erased what I didn't want because this input box is really small. So but then put it back in there and hit save, and then there's this be right back. So once you've got that, then
By the way, Jeff, if you pop the app out, you have a lot more room to move.
That's that is true. I had it popped out, but I didn't do it while I was initially wanting to type. But you're absolutely right. Yeah, especially on the headlines, you get quite a bit more width. I don't know if I can gain any more height, but at least the width. So so once you've got things configured the way you want them, then minimize everything, and you end up with these toggles. And so I just want to turn on my name strap, or I just want to turn on a logo, or just the headlines. And I'll wait 10 seconds. I think I put this at, you'll see that it'll rotate. There we go. And it did describe initially, like the first one, I don't remember what he described it as, but I typed the word welcome. I think maybe that's his welcome, and then I added the rest. But then the second entry is an announcement, and so they were described. There wasn't any difference in syntax, and so I'm like, but obviously he programmatically looking at the first one is this, and I'm going to consider the second one this, and so it is kind of self-defined. But ultimately I can turn all this on, and it has a beautiful combination look as well, right? And when you get I really don't know where the delineation is between this free version and the pro version versus beta right now. Like, are some things missing, that will be in the free version that aren't there because it's beta right now? Or is this everything that the free version will be and it's in beta, and then also, having the pro version? So, but I'm assuming we'll be able to change under the additional layers. It shows us that we will be able to have more options available. So if you add, you can have a meeting call out, animated emoji, photo carousel, chat highlight. You have 4 additional templates in your profile, and there's a button for get more. So he's got some future features, showing off right now to get everybody's, juices flowing. And then under settings, have a base design for, colors and so forth. So I think it's probably the most impressive Zoom app I've, looked at, and it was super easy to, get going. And if I needed to go take a quick bio break and say, hey, David, take over, I'll just flip that switch and boom, it just puts over everything. Which, what, I mean, some of you guys who were in the meeting early today saw this, and having this overlay, which could and will become my blue and orange color, my logo, all that jazz, allows me in vMix to completely test my Stream Deck functionality, change cameras, the whole bit, because it ends up in vMix in the program out, but this covers up the program out. And so I'm like, this is fantastic, So it really helped me just make sure that most things were functional. I need to add a little more.
Just for those of you who may want to play with this, one of the things that I found is I keep my Zoom window up in a smaller monitor in a teleprompter. So it's very hard for me to navigate apps and things like that up there. But if you go into the client itself and you open it up from here, you can click open a meeting, you can access it there, and then it will, if you've said, hey, make sure it's a pop out, then you'll automatically get the pop out here. And then you can, like Jeff said, you can kind of keep this handy and toggle things on or off as you go.
Yeah. It's got on the top that little paper airplane icon, the second one on the top rightish, or even to the right of open and meeting. You can pick whoever, and like you just did, you can do all, and now everybody will get a chat DM, I think, and that gives you a really easy way to, go take a look at it if you want to as well.
There's also the share app screen.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So you're screen sharing right now, so I can't do it. But if you click that, it'll yeah. And there, so if I click this, it's just gonna share with everyone. Just
yeah. It's cool. Yeah. I mean, that's a great shortcut too, right? Because you'd either have to do a portion of the screen or share a particular app, which would be that window, but to just have a quick, easy button to do it and share it and so forth. Works great. I like it a lot. It's not the whole show, right? It's all about, your video. But fact is we, I and yourself and so forth, I've got a lower third up here with moving announcements.
Right. And
I don't have to use vMix, and you don't have to use Ecamm,
right. That's what I was just going to say.
Injecting it.
Think about all those folks. Yeah. Think about all those folks who aren't using vMix or Ecamm or Memo Live. I mean, Memo Live just had a huge announcement also, or they're going to, I was on a call earlier today with someone who is insistent on using Big Marker for webinars. And those of you who've hung out with me know that I'm not a webinar guy. I'm absolutely a meeting guy because I think that people want to be seen and heard. But having said that, we could already turn a Zoom meeting into a webinar using
Pretty
focus
close,
mode and using all those different things. And now with lower thirds, I mean, you've got not a full production suite, but for the folks who aren't using these other production tools, you've got everything you need. It's just amazing.
Well, and I mean, I can just bet that Tuomo is going to, I mean, he's already got my images there. It says, while we're in beta, you can upload your logo. Base design now supports
Which you
logo,
can't yet, but.
And we will have image slideshows and other additional templates. I mean, like, I mean, I can easily see, him adding to this, this kind of bucket of resources that you could just, have open in a floating window, and then the next thing to do is, make it talk OSC or something, so that a Stream Deck, now you're just pushing a Stream Deck button to change the graphic selection in his app, and it's doing an overlay and changing the overlay.
Yeah, your whole pre-roll, right? Eventually, if he gets slideshows going, you could have it built right in, and you just click, you turn on the, I'll be right back button, and it starts to play your pre-roll.
Yeah.
Jason has a comment, good stuff, but I wonder if it works with Zoom education or government or healthcare type accounts, because the permissions state stuff like information about participants, computers, phones, and other devices, which may include information about speakers, microphones, camera, OS version, hard disk, etc. And general location is restricted.
Yeah. I mean, it's a point to be made, but I'll say that's not on Tuomo, the creator, to create something that can get through all that. I mean, isn't that primarily the organization that either allows apps or certain apps and disallows others? And so, I mean, I would guess that that's more of their vetting process, not the application.
Can I make a comment though about government Zoom? So I last week earlier this week, we were celebrating Passover, and the White House had their annual Passover Seder, their online Seder. And so and it was on Zoom webinar. And so I participated. Well, I watched, because that's all you can do on a webinar. It was like someone forgot to turn on original audio. And so all of the singing, you couldn't hear the singing. When they were playing music through, a friend of mine was on it doing something, playing guitar, you couldn't hear the guitar. I was so embarrassed for them. The YouTube version came out fine, because apparently they were using something that was also not streaming through Zoom to YouTube. But the Zoom itself, and my first thought was that a restriction because it was a government account? Do government accounts not have original audio as an option?
Hard to call.
And I don't know.
Hard to call, but yeah, and anybody can overlook it, whether it was a total lack of knowledge or just a forgotten part of the process. Yeah, it's a tough one. I was I was on a call several days ago with I guess I could refer to them as a potential client. It was actually a post on Facebook asking, if somebody would be willing to connect and answer a few questions about webinar. And so I thought, okay, I'll reply. And we ended up, after a while, jumping on a Zoom. And I was a little bit leery. And I didn't used to be, but I was a little bit leery. I don't know why necessarily, but I felt like I was on a job interview. All of a sudden, I'm like, this is not what I called for, and so, he respected that. And we just started talking about, the event that was coming up and so forth. And so, he said, it's going to be a webinar. We're going to have I don't remember how many presenters, but several presenters. And we're going to be using the 2020 method. And that is, 20 slides in 20 minutes. And, so it's, kind of rapid fire paced and so forth. And it's all about AI, hottest topic out there. So, and so he was describing, how the speaker is going to deliver. And when he described, and we're not going to be doing Q&A. So now it's like drop dead one direction, right? Like not even any like handwritten Q&A. And so I said, if I can be bold enough to ask you why live, why ask the world to carve out 2 hours of their time for a live event that is going to provide nothing unique in those 2 hours than they can get in a replay? And why deliver something or produce something live and put that burden on all the speakers when you can deliver a lot better product pre-recorded, because that this event has nothing to do with interactivity, and
Well, Jeff, the event that I was
on, and wondered.
the event that I was on was that Seder was pre-recorded. It was obvious to me that there was nothing live about it, and you're absolutely right. If there was chat and things like that where people could not only participate in the event at the same time, but know that other people were participating in the event at the same time, then maybe it's worth it. But otherwise, I think you're right. Just post it on YouTube and move on.
Yeah. Market it and drive people there to watch it. And what do you want out of it? It's one of those things. And when you go, if you're going to do a replay, then it will always be available on anybody's schedule. But these 2 hours in particular, only a fraction of them will be, available and ready to attend. And then for what good reason, so it's a big ask. It's actually a 3-hour event where 2 hours were speakers. And then they're going to put into chat a link to the meeting. So they have to leave the webinar, join a meeting to then have discussion. And I'm like, well, you're kind of there, but you're going to lose a crap load of people, from the original during that transition. Not everybody's going to go. And he knew that, but just, kind of thinking things through. But it was, he had never done a webinar before. And so, there were some definite, unknowns, and and they, they're expecting a few thousand people. They're licensed for 5,000 right now. And it's like, you're putting, it was, him plus he's looking for one or three other helpers behind, something you've never done before with an audience that you expect to be that large. That's risky business, man. If you think webinar is meetings, think again. There are plenty of unique facets of webinar that can ruin a savvy meeting manager in a heartbeat, that you just don't expect to be, the experience, but it can be. It certainly can be. So anyways, live and learn, I guess. I like these graphics. It's kind of cool. I especially like that ticker, man. I can come up with all kinds of things to say and share. I don't know if it does multi-line. I'll test that out.
It doesn't do multi-line, but there are multiple. It changes every few seconds. You can indicate how many seconds you want it to each one to last, and then you can change the text on each of the.
You can change each one's timing.
No. You can change the timing of
between each one,
right?
But not uniquely between.
No.
There's not unique timing between.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. It's got a lot of promise. So the first one is welcome, and that is my text. The second one is announcement, and that's my text. What if I put in the word announcement, hello, or does that kill the definition, or does it just become what gets displayed? Anybody else have a Zoom app that you use regularly or have used with success?
No, I really haven't gotten into the apps.
Yeah.
By the way, is
Yeah.
anybody else seeing that the pre-release price on the SPX is sold out?
Yeah, it's a technical glitch. It's on the bottom left. There's some fine print that says it's a technical issue. I mean, you can't really be sold out of software, right? And you're not even getting software these days. I mean, you're getting the experience of it, but you're literally just buying the right to use it. Yeah, so announcement, hello. So it is just line after line after line.
That original sound, David, that's such a classic gotcha with Zoom. You know, if people, very few people that, you know, doing these conferences, especially even professionally, they don't necessarily fire up a client to actually listen to what's going out.
I know, right? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how long it's been, but I've always just had that laptop and earbuds hanging off of it. And, you know, it's in at the beginning for quite a bit of the beginning, and then reach over every once in a while to double check or have somebody on it all the time. But yeah, you have to have either somebody who's on comms who that's all they're doing is watching and listening and giving you feedback, and or yourself, depending on how big the whole gig is. It's crazy. All right, I see how this. So is there? I don't imagine there's a limit of how many line entries you can put in either, huh? Pretty cool. Very good. Well, Marty, what have you been up to? I haven't seen you in a while.
Been busy, you know, doing a bunch of corporate conference work, induction loop systems for hearing assistance, and some video editing. Work has
You know
been
what?
pretty
I
varied.
don't know, a couple weeks ago now, maybe. I my son is home from college right now, and he's I would say he's preparing to go serve a mission for the church, but he's literally home on his mission. He's living by the rules right now. He's already called, but anyways, he's not taking his iPhone 13 with him, and I'm on an 8 Plus, so I'll probably get a phone upgrade. He's not taking his AirPod Pros. I've had just regular AirPods, and so I've been using his Pros, and then I put them in. I was looking at the options for, you know, noise cancellation, which was super impressive. I mean, I'm a pilot, and so I mean, I'm used to the change, almost a vacuum change, you know. And I mean, when you're sitting behind a propellered engine, it's noisy. Let me tell you, super noisy. But so they're super impressive. But when I started to fly in like the early '90s on my David Clark's, they didn't do much. It was crazy. But these light speeds and others, that Bose noise cancellations are fantastic. But these AirPod Pros, the noise cancellation was super impressive. I took a road trip and had my windows, you know, cracked down, and it just all went away. And I was listening to office hours, and I'm just like, wow, this is phenomenal. And then I touched spatial. And I'm telling you, I totally dig listening to office hours in spatial audio through the AirPods Pro. It just kind of makes me feel like I'm just sitting in a room with the guys talking. You know,
So I didn't know that they were encoding in spatial yet, but
I don't know that it's being delivered. I assume that the AirPod Pros are simulating it, but I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, Alex said he'd been testing with it or experimenting with it, so maybe you caught one of those.
Maybe
that's real. I'm real curious to have that experience to see what the audible perspective is, right?
Yeah.
So where did you feel you were sitting in terms of everybody else?
It just like we could there's two modes. There's fixed spatial and then there's head adjusted. I couldn't distinguish the difference between the two in what I was listening to, but I just felt like we were in a like a conference room, conference table of a very untreated conference room where there was plenty of bouncing and so forth of sound, but it just took that direct feed out and it really just kind of relaxed the listening experience a bit. I haven't even tried it with music. I don't even think I would. It was super effective with talking heads as far as feeling much more part of it. So, and I did it with an audiobook as well, and that worked really well. So
now I've heard that the difference between fixed and variable head positioning is that when you turn your head in one mode, people move with you so that they're always in the same space with you. And in the other mode, as you turn your head, you might be looking at one person and away from another person where they stay fixed.
They may have been talking in front of you and now they're talking behind you because you turned. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'll have to listen for that and see what that's like. So it's pretty amazing what's being done out there, especially on. I can tell you, never impressed, and they never fit me well either. Just the AirPods initially, but and I have big ear holes, so I have to put in. Sometimes I have to buy, some aftermarket. What are those? Not comforts. It starts with a C, but
I have a tough time getting a good fit with generic.
Yeah, well, and I'll tell you what, the AirPod Pros, where most people, have them, hanging mostly down or a slight angle down. Mine actually fit better if I put them in and then twist them up. So they're coming up this way because it just seats into my canal with that one twist. It just seats right in and it's solid and it's a really nice solid seal as well. And it's comfortable. But the original AirPods used to, as kind of the appearance of being very non-intrusive, used to give me sore spots on my ears, and I'm like, I can't do that. So I wore these Shures that had that silicone, really soft silicone, fit and seal, and loved them. They were fantastic. But now I've lost, I still have those Shures. They were I don't know. Back in the day, they were super expensive, but that was only like $145, which is nothing these days. But they were tiny. But man, they sounded so amazing, and I still have them. But one of them isn't as loud as the other. Like really noticeable.
That could be the position in your ear canal, whether it's firing directly down your ear canal or bouncing.
Well, but if I change them, it's still the softer one. It's an output thing. And so I've taken it apart and tried to make sure there's no earwax or crap in it, and it wasn't. I don't know what it is. It wasn't blockage either. So
I'm getting really tempted to have some custom molds made in my ears. Yeah.
That doctor a week or so ago who came on about ears was amazing.
Dr. Santucci, he was really good.
Yeah.
And before And in preparation for the surround sound, Atmos mixing guest that was on the week after, I was in her studio talking, and she was playing me a project that she was working on, and it was a music project. And the producer wanted the viewer's perspective to be on stage in the middle of the band.
Mm.
And so the singer, the vocalist, was not particularly centered, but centered and to the side all at the same time. And band members were behind, and it was a little disorienting, the perspective, viewer's perspectives can make a huge difference.
Yeah, I think I might feel like a bouncer's going to be coming anytime and kick my butt off the stage. Yeah. You're not supposed to be there as a audience member. So interesting. I mean, I've been on a lot of events and a lot of live lately, because that's back with force, but only one time, because I'm far from being a audiophile for sure, but I was in either South or North Dakota at an event, and they had these dueling piano guys come in from Minnesota, and they were amazing. I mean, amazing. And it wasn't. Like they shouldn't have even called themselves dueling pianos, because they do that and they have a bit of that shtick, but man, they had the sax and they had a guitar and they had a drummer come join them later, and they were, both of them, and their vocals and their range were incredible, and the entertainment was just fascinating. But it also got coupled with an audio engineer that night. I said, man, these guys, I told him several times, these guys are amazing. It sounds so good. And he says, what you need to do? He says, you need to go, if you haven't done it yet, go sit right in that section of chairs, because he had that room, and it had like a big square up top where lighting and fixtures and sound, and so it was, it wrapped the room, which probably had its own challenges of sound bouncing and so forth. But needless to say, like when I got there, I'm like, holy moly, it was just like the place. It was the cleanest, and I didn't even know what that was until that moment I sat down. This is the cleanest, crispest, most gorgeous sound. And it was only two dudes on a stage. It was crazy how good it sounded. And this guy really, he's truly a scientist, in his craft. But I was really blown away. I was really taken back. All the events have sound, but it's just sound. But this one was just polished. It's like, wow. I didn't even ask. I didn't want to ask, well, what'd you do? Wouldn't mean anything to me, man. But he sure knew where he was heading. And the artists were just super, super thankful. Like they were just all over. I was like, thanks for not over compressing the crap out of us and this and that. And I'm like, that's great when they, they hear it, they feel it, they appreciate it and show it. So that was pretty cool. That was kind of my one time of that kind of, experience and witnessing the feedback and the whole bit.
Very cool.
Yeah, quite cool. Well, Robert, 24 hours later, we're still at it. That was wild. So we were working together last night, my time, really late his time. And I was working. Robert went to bed. Robert comes back on. He had slept the whole night. And I'm like, it's, I don't know, 1:00 in my time. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to bed. And then he's been up all day. Kind of wild, like 7 hours difference, I think, from me.
Maybe it'd be interesting, Jeff, just to talk about the test setup that we had, because it was useful for doing all of these tests with Companion, because we needed a laboratory type environment where we could play with things without disrupting anyone's outcome of an event or experience.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah, and and it's it's spotlighting, right? A lot of it's spotlighting as well, and you have to have a camera, like you have to have video to be able to be spotlit, and so that adds an extra edge, right? Like you can create all kinds of connections with computers, but they may not all be outfitted with a webcam or some kind of a virtual camera with a video feed, but yeah, so I have these. I got some more yesterday as well. I kind of tucked them away, but I have these guys. I just have a mix of these. They're just expression model videos, they're just short loops. This one's like 18 seconds, and I just put it on loop in vMix, and got a few of those, and then I found fetched a few more of just different folks, different faces, and so forth. And so I shipped Robert the gentleman versions. I've kept the female versions plus one or two others that I had, and Robert had a camera on his computer. I had one or two cameras on some of my computers, but part of the limitation is my network. I have a 1 gig network, and these have to go out. I host them on vMix, and I tell vMix I have 4 outputs. One's my primary program out, so I have 3 that I can use to get out onto the network via NDI. And so I just say output number 2 plays this input, number 3 plays that input, and yes, do it via NDI. And so they float out on my network. Then on my other computers, and I mean, I can populate a Zoom meeting with my computer at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. iPad is 6, iPhone is 7. So I can populate a meeting pretty quickly and easily with like 7, participants. But the camera part of it, I mean, sometimes I don't even like looking at myself from all the way around the room if they're all real cameras. But I have one that doesn't have a camera. I think all the others do. But so I play these out at NDI, and then they have to get consumed, right? And so I load up the NewTek virtual webcam input tool that basically looks for an NDI feed on the network and then makes it a webcam to the local Zoom application. And so they just played, and now I did need one more. And so VLC player, you can set its output to NDI. And so I loaded that extra one in VLC. And then Robert, I don't know, you used vMix too, right? To NDI output yours? You're muted.
I had some physical laptops set up and running those videos in loops from them, so we could get the individual users on Zoom.
How did you ingest them to become a camera to the Zoom?
I just loaded them into OBS and used a virtual cam.
I gotcha. Yeah. Oh, they each had OBS. I gotcha.
They each had OBS, and we looped it. I looped it around.
Yeah,
it was the simplest way to do it.
yeah.
But I also had a Mac Mini running a ZoomISO, because I gave up my my standard license, the OSC license, when I took on the ISO license, because the ISO includes all of the OSC
exactly.
functionality. And so I was running a Mac Mini on that and playing with it. and ingesting and sending out all the NDI feeds into a big machine with vMix, and played with a couple of things on there, looking at the amount of network capacity that was being consumed, and also played with the number of 1080p feeds you can get out of a Mac Mini. Because just to give some context, Jeff and I had the whole of this setup running for over 24 hours. So it was a good place to try out things for stability, for long-term usability, because a lot of questions have been asked, even here in the Zoom test kitchen, is ISO stable? Yeah. ZoomISO, and I can tell you it was super stable. I had absolutely no problems with ZoomISO. However, I did kill the Mac Mini by loading up 8 1080p NDI feeds.
Yeah.
And it just rolled over, and it didn't give any warnings, no messages. It just blew up on me completely. So that was a real learning curve for me. But Andy mentioned that you can have 4 on a Mac Mini, not the Mac Mini, what is it called? The 2 version, the new version of processors and chips.
The M2, yeah.
The M2. I still have the M1, and so 4 1080p feeds work no problem at all. I added a 5th one, and that was stable for over 8 hours. So that's doable. And then the rest of them was 720. I believe the documentation says you can have up to 16 720 feeds on a Mac Mini M1. So that was all good. Also, for people who've been playing who use vMix, I did the ISO recordings from vMix directly to a NAS over the network, which is also very interesting because it doubled the capacity, the network usage, literally doubled it, because everything coming in was going out. And it didn't put much usage on the PC that was running vMix, which was interesting. The NAS was struggling a bit, but just in terms of RAM and not so much on the disks or the processor power. So that was okay. And then I literally played with all the buttons and combinations and workflows of my past events that I had in front of me, and I was pushing buttons. And I think that's where we come back to just what we started off with at this session. Jeff started off saying that he really wanted to build a consumer version of the Stream Deck config, and he has done that. I mean, when I played with it, this is like, it's not a plug and play, but you put it in and it comes out pretty easily, and it does the things you want it and you expect it to do for most of the time. There are the exceptions that Jeff mentioned earlier on, but for most of it, you do it. One of the things that I learned, and we talked a lot about, is where you put the buttons, because, and we both came to the conclusion that it's a preference, a personal preference as to where the buttons are located. But what I noticed is that I don't use the screen or the Stream Deck itself to try and figure out what's going on during the meeting. I look at the screen. So the Stream Deck is just a control surface for what's happening in the meeting. And one of the things that I really liked was being able to select the people that I wanted things to happen to, put my finger on the event that I meant to call, or the function I meant to call, and sit and wait for the right moment and just click it. I mean, instead of chasing your mouse around the screen, trying to click on the various options, that was like luxury for me. What was also really nice was pulling people off and putting someone in their place on the screen when spotlighting. That was really helpful. And then playing with that, I realized, and Jeff mentioned this message that I sent him this morning, that I was having to deselect the selected speakers, and that's where we thought up clear all selections is the easiest way to do it. Clear all and then reselect someone that's important for you. So you're working through the workflow exactly the way you have it written out in a spreadsheet or something, and you see what's going to happen next, and you can just pre-select them and click go, move on to the next step in the workflow. Yeah. So it's I use queues, and this was just brilliant because you could just have your queue in front of you and run through the steps one by one. So I don't do complicated events, but the solution that Jeff has come up with, the config for the Stream Deck, is ideal for the type of events that I run. Yeah, it's really, really good.
Well, thank you, sir. I was looking at something here, and I got to see if my Stream Deck data is live or not. Let's see.
Oh, and just one more thing, Jeff, that you didn't mention, that when you put the page selection on the Stream Deck on the initializing page, when we talked about that, and I said it's not necessary, and then you said to me something that really that hit me straight away, and that if someone has an issue and he calls you, there is no way without knowing which page those that the whole import has been made to, that you'll be able to support him, because you can't see, you physically don't see the Stream Deck. So if someone doesn't understand what he's doing, he needs to have those buttons in front of him, and then that bottom left-hand corner there to start the Stream Deck config is really cool as well, because that takes you out of that configuration mode, which you can get back to any time, and you have the time date just sitting there looking at you. And that bright and dim button is super cool as well.
I didn't tell you about that till like the very end, huh? But I don't even know why I really thought about it, but is that, this could do more, and that would be a pretty cool kind of night ops, day ops type, way to make it happen. Because, going into Companion, you can change the slider, but you can't, I mean, when I do it on mine, it changes it on both Stream Decks, and but you can do it on one or the other, or make them different. But
sometimes your location in the location you're in, the lighting conditions change, so it's nice to have that option. It's really nice. So
so I'm looking at let's see, meeting entry time ascending or descending, because we can now in our gallery, we can sort by first name ascending or descending, last name ascending or descending, or meeting entry time as well. And I'm trying to take a peek on the sort in the gallery and see how close I can get, because I should be able to get pretty close. See Jeff and Gerald, ZoomISO. Yeah. Of the Stream Deck, the blue button page, and to where when you said you're looking at the screen, not your Stream Deck, to manage and so forth, is to see how close it is. So like the last one in my gallery, so if I'll put follow host order so you can see what I'm seeing. So Marty's the last video tile, right? And if I share my Stream Deck, you'll see that Marty's the last entry. And then John is before Marty. John's before there. Hasma, Robert, and then mine shows ZoomISO. But I think that's where we start. The gallery starts taking, it still has precedence. Like I can tell it to sort, but it only sorts by arrival time, I believe. Because I love the arrival time sort. Like, you know, in what order did they get here? Because it's very fixed, and it pretty much aligns with this Stream Deck page, with the exception of that I'm the host, so I'm first. It's my video. I mean, even if you're not a host, you're still first in the list, even if you tell it to sort by arrival order, right? So there's still those, you know, top tier entries that have to, you know, get placed, and then the chosen, you know, gallery sort order takes place. And but you know, I mean, you know, in a big meeting, you know, that might occupy you know, in my world, I usually have, you know, at least 3 machines involved, you know, in jobs. As far as, you know, I've got a witness system that, you know, and as an audience member, I definitely have a playback system, and then you know, my primary, if I'm playing host or whatnot, but the one that's connected to my vMix for any particular, you know, needs on the fly of, you know, injecting playback or whatnot. The other playback systems, I usually do my video out of vMix, not just my live video, but playback video, unless there's a big list. If there's a big playlist, then it'll be a completely separate system with like QLab or whatnot. But a lot of the playbacks are, you know, slide decks as well. I don't do slide decks in vMix, but you know, it just, you know, there's multiple. So, you know, the first 4 buttons maybe on my Stream Deck is going to be my stuff. And that's only if they have to be co-host, right? If they don't have to be co-host and they can still contribute, then they'll sort out there like every other attendee. So point being is most of the buttons, what you're looking at on screen, are going to be in the same order. There's going to be a different starting point, but once it starts, if you're sorting your gallery by like arrival order, your participants page on the Stream Deck on this project we were working on is going to match that. And that's even all the more convenient to be able to have kind of that brain eye reference and go, okay, that's, you know, 6 buttons in, or because it was the 6th tile in your gallery, right? So it will be interesting. It'll never be a perfect match because there's those winners always, but it'll be really close. Anyways, well, it's been a fun project. This one's ready to let loose to the world, and guys have any other ideas? I'm just gonna keep weighing on. I am going to put together like a companion 3.0 course, you know, meeting time and course with very specific, you know, focus on known agenda items and so forth. So won't be like the kitchen in the sense, I mean, hopefully I'll still keep it as comfortable, but it's not going to be casual conversation. It'll be a very well-known teach. And 3.0 is a big difference. It's a big rewrite, and it's great. I mean, it's really great. It gives us a lot of power, a lot of flexibility, and I hope that there's still a lot to come, because I think there's definitely some areas that, you know, could continue to grow and get even better. But it's a huge change from 2.4.2 to 3.0. Biggest one I've ever seen, and but in a very, very beneficial way. So anyways, if you have any other, you know, kind of topics or whatnot that you want to focus on, you know, I'm sure there'll probably be maybe some more announcements next week. I'm not sure that there will be any unique announcements next week at NAB from Zoom, but I think we got the bulk of everything today. I know Andy had indicated there's one that got pushed back a little bit as he let us know that, but so there would be something coming sometime, but I'm not sure if they'll hit us with anything else new next week or not, but maybe. And we haven't, Zoom update. Let's take a look real quick, actually, at their release notes to see when they've got the next one targeted. Windows last updated on the 13th. Okay. And yeah, they have a really healthy list coming up. So it's slated on the 17th. So that's 3 days, right? And they've got new and enhanced features. Meeting webinar, custom text color for captions. Meeting features, interpreter exemption to hosts preventing participants from unmuting. So host designated interpreters will be able to unmute themselves even when the host prevents participants from unmuting themselves.
Finally.
Nice.
I don't think one appreciates how much of a problem that was.
Oh, that's got to be huge. You're trying to lock the audience out, and the interpreters are not the audience, but yet they're being treated like it, right? And so you had to make everybody co-host, I'm assuming, which is a problem of its own.
It's a serious problem.
Yeah, that'd be tough. So, previously all participants in meeting except the host and co-host were blocked. So they have the freedom that a host co-host have as far as being able to unmute themselves.
That was a change request that I put in about 2 years ago. So
is that all? They're pretty fast.
No, but the feedback was pretty straightforward and said that less than 0.5% of all of the usage is with interpretation. So you're going to have to get a lot of voters to get this change made. Well, you've made my day. That's really good. I'm really
cool. So that's the first one under meeting features. Continuous meeting chat file and images sync. File and images shared during the meeting synchronize with the dedicated group chat created for the meeting, allowing participants to access them after the meeting. In the same fashion, files and images shared and so forth will sync. So that's cool. Webinar automated and translated captions enhancements. Translated captions in webinars are enhanced to make it simpler for attendees while providing hosts with greater control before webinar starts. Hosts can set their own speaking language as well as the speaking language of the webinar and of each panelist. There we go. That's good. I'm gonna let Kirsten in. Webinar resources. I like this. Speaker details. So webinar hosts can also add information about their speakers, which will appear in the resources tab during the live webinar. And information such as name, profile picture, job title, details, biography, social media. Team chat. If you use it, I use it a little bit, but not tons. Mail and calendar, contact center, and then bug fixes. Some not so descriptive. These are resolved an issue regarding OTP, issue with incorrect Portuguese localizations of scheduling options, resolved an issue regarding special characters not being displayed correctly in the activity center, resolved an issue regarding slide control compatibility with the Czech language localization of PowerPoint, resolved an issue for a subset of users regarding annotation causing the Zoom client to crash. That's never fun. Resolved an issue regarding inconsistent UAC behavior, causing incoming calls. Zoom Rooms tab. And then finally, waiting room customizations not appearing properly. They've been busy as usual. So yeah, I have plenty coming out. So yeah, we'll take a look
Always
at that
something.
one.
It's certainly an active pipeline, right?
Yeah, no question. Yeah, and that's just the healthy one. I mean, you know, if you keep an eye out on release notes, there's always a product that's, you know, doing something, right? And then sometimes they get thick enough to where they combine them on a release date. But yeah, they're a very busy team. That is for sure.
Hey, this may be loosely related to Zoom, but also to vMix and other things. Has anybody had a chance to try out the third-party NDI sound card add-ons for multi-track, multi-channel audio?
Have not.
So it's the ability to do 64 channels of audio over NDI bidirectionally.
Wow. Interesting. You think they're trying to compete with anybody in particular?
Dante?
I was just wondering. I wanted the expert to respond. Yeah. Wow. It's a lot of channels.
It's a lot of channels. And
the timing of that is probably pretty critical, because getting equipment with Dante at the moment, because the limitation on chipset access is pretty harsh on a lot of big companies at the moment.
yeah, and this came out last year, like before Thanksgiving. This came out in the fall. Also, an audio gateway. What is that doing? Oh, that interfaces between local devices and the NDI network, converting audio to and from Windows and Mac OS core audio, Linux devices. So it takes your system audio, puts it on NDI to and from. So that you can then transport it.
Yeah. Everybody's striving to get on the network, you know?
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Yep, for sure. Well, I don't even know what time it is.
Yeah.
Time flies in the kitchen. 2.5 hours.
True.
2.5 hours is short.
I went to another meeting and came back. And you were still here.
Kirsten just arrived. She knew we'd be here still. That's the thing, you know? So anyways, if I talk nice and smooth and soft, we'll probably get maybe Kirsten and Robert to start nodding off, and it's getting late. What is it, 4:30? So it's 11:30 your time, Robert. I don't know what it is in Germany for Kirsten.
So
yeah, we're in the same time zone.
Same.
Weekend.
Yeah, good seeing you. Thanks for coming by, Marty.
Sure. Yeah, it was a big announcement today, so wanted to follow up.
Yeah, no question. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, it's fun to watch. Watch Andy. Man, he's one of the most grown-up young men I've come around in a long time. I mean, he really.
It's hard to find somebody in any corporate environment that can talk about so many different points.
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
he can so quickly. just
Well, and
run
that's the thing. I mean,
in.
and he can in one moment have that conversation, you know, with a C-level just as easily as he can go have the same necessary conversation with an engineer or developer and not be out of his league. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
pretty impressive. Yeah, great guy. Great guy. I don't think he sleeps still. I've sworn that for the last 2+ years. Doesn't sleep much. Anyways, all right, everybody.
All right.
Well, let's put a close
Yeah.
to this. It's been good connecting. We, like most of you know, or people watching back, every Friday afternoon at 3:00 Eastern, we meet here. We have been streaming to our YouTube channel, the Zoom Test Kitchen. We have a Discord server, Zoom Test Kitchen, and our if you register to attend this meeting, even if you don't show up, the sheer registration process will get you in our database, so you'll at least receive invitations. I don't think I've ever sent out a email for any other reason other than just an invitation to Fridays, but it would be the same channel if we had a big announcement of something or wanted some feedback from the group. But it's a great community. Yeah, it's just great to get together and really hammer some things out. And sometimes it's a big learn session, sometimes it's a teach session, you know, and we kind of never know who the teacher is going to be with the experience and the knowledge, but it's an open, comfortable community to have the conversations and learn and make mistakes and all that jazz. So always a pleasure. But I will say goodbye for now and wish everybody a great weekend. And I'll see you next week.
Thanks, Jeff. Bye.